Monty had planned to talk about, well, his essay and is kind of his skepticism that the Church of Nazarene will actually change on this issue. And even though he's not here, it might be worth our time to chat about that a bit and invite people who are in the conference to post their own thoughts in the chat box and weigh in. Alexa, from your standpoint, how optimistic are you that the Church of the Nazarene is going to change its views on LGBTQ, at least to be fully affirming?
That's a tough one, you know. As much as I'd like to be really hopeful and optimistic, I hope that it happens within my lifetime. And I also think the way to talk about this, maybe in the most hopeful perspective, is to, as much as we can, expand that definition of church, which I think we're already sort of exploring and committed to. But, you know, if in the next 15, 20 years, the manual never changes, how can the face of the church actually show an affirming message, even if we're not quite there to it officially on paper?
I like that a lot. My optimism and pessimism ebbs and flows depending on how hard I'm going to get attacked on social media. But a word for the optimistic side. The latest change in the statement on human sexuality in the Church of Nazarene didn't go nearly as far as I wish it would. But I have to admit, it's an improvement on what it used to be. It used to have all kinds of wrath language and, so that's a positive step. We need a lot more, but it's at least a positive step. So that gives me hope.
Yeah.
It also gives me hope when I look at all these polls of not only sort of, most of them are North American polls, but not only of the general public, but especially of people under the age of 40. There's a far higher percentage of younger people who are affirming. Now, it could be that a bunch of those people leave the denomination, and so they're not around to vote in the change. But it also could be that there's enough who do stay that eventually, just by mere demographics, at least in North America, the denomination will become affirming. But that's what I think on my most optimistic days.
Absolutely. You know, I think there's a world, you know, possible worlds, there's many of them. There's a world in which the young folks leave the Nazarene Church and the Nazarene Church dies out. But dying out, only a group of people or an entity can die out. You know, obviously those people then go into other spaces. And so how are those people who are leaving the church creating their own churches elsewhere? You know, you and I had a conversation with Josh Patterson, I think is his last name, from the podcast Rethinking Faith, who is a former pastor who has left the formal church and now works in a brewery and is really encouraging in his sort of imagining the church in different spaces, you know. And so if at the end of the day the pessimistic world comes to light and the young people have all left, you know, those young people were still raised Nazarene. And I think the spirit of the Nazarene church that you and I believe in, I think lives on, maybe if it doesn't have the capital N Nazarene in front of it.
Good. Let me read two comments from the chat box, one from Tracy Tucker, one from Craig Keene. Tracy says, I'm not sure the greater collective of the Church of Nazarene could survive the civil war that would ensue in the event of a quick change. However, the United Methodist Church is sort of surviving despite its split. We can do it. The only other option is for the Church of the Nazarene to shrivel. And Craig says, I'm not sure that I want Lenexa, here he's meaning the headquarters of the denomination. I'm not sure that I want Lenexa to, quote, change. Its institutional survival, instincts will very likely act in wooden and self-promoting ways. On the other hand, local churches under the oversight of Lenexa are changing already. There's every reason to expect more and more of that. Yeah, good comments there. When I think about that, I think about the accusations that I get often from people who read our book who read, who engage me on social media. They say, you guys that wrote this book, you're just trying to split the Church of the Nazarene. Why don't you just go with the Methodists and, go that route? And I have two general responses to that. One is to say, the Church of the Nazarene is already splitting because so many people are leaving, especially young people are leaving over this particular issue, that that they don't feel like they have a place in the church. So there's been a split going on for decades. And my other response is to those who say, why don't you just go become United Methodist? I don't really say this, but I want to when I'm really ornery. I want to say, why don't you just go become a Baptist? but um, but I think what's really at stake is both those who think differently than I do and me. We want to see the church to become the kind of place that we think represents the love of Christ.
Mhm.
And we just have different views on what that looks like. And at least some of us, and I feel like I'm in this category, feel called to do what we can to try to move the denomination that we're a part of toward the affirming position.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if this is a denomination that you love, it's worth it to stick around through the hard parts, struggle, and embrace this conversation, this tension within ourselves. And how it ever shakes out, only time will tell. But yeah, to show love to the roots of the Nazarene Church, I think it requires sticking around for a while, at least as much as you're able. I think that individually, it makes total sense for many folks to bow out for their own personal reasons. But as a denomination, I think we need to commit to ourselves and really engage in this conversation.
Excellent.